Welcome to Matt's Financial Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate it. We're holding a Mind Speak this Saturday at the Sankara in Westlands. Looking forward to hosting St Paul's PLC, its founder Richard Britton Long, and key officers from the organisation. St Paul's is a UK-focused property company investing primarily in UK government and quasi-government occupied properties. If you want to know what Mindspeak's all about, there's a link on YouTube to take a look at that. Looking forward to Richard. He's outspoken, he's feisty, and he has some strong views on the real estate market, and quite an expert. Home thoughts, I went back to Ngugi wa Thiongo. Our lives are a battlefield on which is fought a continuous war between the forces that are pledged to confirm our humanity and those determined to dismantle it, those who strive to build a protective wall around it, and those who wish to pull it down, those who seek to mold it, and those committed to breaking it up, those who aim to open our eyes, to make us see the light and look to tomorrow, and those who wish to lull us into closing our eyes. Two more. The condition of women in a nation is the real measure of its progress. Prescription of the correct cure is dependent on a rigorous analysis of the reality. Political reflections, it looks like it's all going to be between these two, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump. The Economist is saying Hillary Clinton will be the Democratic nominee. And the man most likely to face her in November on the Republican ticket is Donald Trump. Those are the battle lines after the primaries on Super Tuesday. In many ways, this is profoundly gloomy. Mr. Trump has said ever more repellent things about immigrants, women, and Muslims, and declined to condemn white supremacists, but he changes his sales pitch as easily as his socks in a speech after winning 7 out of 11 states, which I listened to. He stopped snarling and tried to sound presidential. It would be unwise to underestimate his ability to feign gravitas and transform himself into an apparent centrist. The only obstacle between Mr. Trump and the Oval Office would be Mrs. Clinton. She is a formidable and in some ways admirable candidate, but flawed, says The Economist. I think Donald Trump missed a golden opportunity in Chicago to take the high ground, tack towards the center, where he will have to go if he is to win the White House. The current tone, in my view, is ultimately inimical to his chances. It was a West African MD of an international bank who said that Trump was just one terrorist attack away from the White House. If that attack occurred, of course, in the weeks running up to the election, he could just point and say, look, I told you so. South Korean and US militaries have said they have notified the North of the non-provocative nature of the exercises, involving about 17,000 American troops and more than 300,000 South Koreans. And my conclusions are Kim Jong-un strikes me as pretty paranoid as it is, you remember, machine gunned his uncle and called him a scum of a dog or something, a very fruity turn of phrase. And I think, this kind of thing is entirely provocative when it comes to Kim Jong-un. Disaster for Angela Merkel as exit polls suggest defeat in 2 out of 3 regional elections. Suffered humiliating losses to the anti-immigrant Alternative für Deutschland party in 3 key state elections, seen as a referendum on our open-door refugee policy, which allowed more than 1 million migrants to enter the country last year. And then I like this tweet from Sputnik. Turkey can always resort to weapons of mass migration against Europe. Syrian civil war, West failed to factor in Bashar al-Assad's Iranian backers. The Assad regime came the message from the Washington think tanks and mountebank experts had reached a cliche we should all be aware of, the tipping point. Clinton announced that Assad had to go. French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius declared that Assad did not deserve to live on this planet, although he failed to name the galaxy to which the Syrian president might retire. I complied with an independent request to write Assad's obituary for future use, you understand, and still it moulders in the paper's archives. In May 2011, an Al Jazeera crew filmed armed men shooting at Syrian troops a few hundred meters from the northern border with Lebanon, but the channel declined to air the footage, which their reporter later showed to me. A Syrian television crew working for the government produced a tape showing men with pistols and Kalashnikovs in a Dera demonstration in the very early days of the rising. This did not prove the Gulf Turkish terrorist conspiracy, which the Syrian regime now revealed to the world, but it did demonstrate that from the start, when ordinary Syrian families felt it necessary to defend their families with firearms, guns were available to the opposition. And by constantly reminding readers and viewers of the Alawite domination of Assad, we journalists ourselves fell victim to our own reporting. We forgot, or did not care, that perhaps 80% of the Syrian government army were Sunni Muslims who would, over the next 4 years, be fighting their co-religionists in the opposition militias, by 2014 struggling against them in the Al-Qaeda-Nusra alliance and in ISIS. He's making points which very rarely get ventilated. Stefan Ramstorff from Germany's Potsdam Institute of Climate Impact Research says the global temperatures for February are unprecedented. Have a look at his charts. And I wrote in November that I cannot help feeling we're like frogs in boiling water. We've created massive interference in the cosmic tuning phenomenon. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro 111.47, dollar index 96.19, the Japanese yen 113.83, Swissy 0.9835, the pound 143.65, the Australian dollar 0.7534, Indian rupee 69.975, South Korean won 11.8431, Rial 358.28, Egyptian pound 782.57, and the rands at 15.2305. I'll put up a 3-month chart of the dollar index. Obviously, a lot depends on Janet Yellen, but I think a lot of people have become way too confident that the US will not hike that much, and I think they'll hike more than the not much that's currently being priced in. Gold was trading at 1253.70. That remains very firm, and notwithstanding the rebound we've had in higher beta currencies and in the commodity markets of late. Crude oil is at a really key area now. US oil just shy of 40. That's the forward contract. The first contract is at $39.32. Sub-Saharan Africa, a soldier stands over a body on a beach after the attack in Grand Bassam, which is in the Ivory Coast. Al-Qaeda's North Africa branch claimed responsibility after 6 gunmen opened fire on civilians at an Ivory Coast beach resort, killing at least 16 people. Bloody bodies were sprawled on the beach, and witnesses described horrific scenes as a lazy Sunday afternoon was shattered by West Africa's latest attack. 14 civilians and 2 special forces soldiers were killed before the 6 assailants were gunned down in the resort of Grand Bassam, located about 40 kilometers east of Abidjan. Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara arrived in Grand Bassam a few hours after the shooting rampage. I was struggling to think why such an attack should take place, but of course France has made its base for its war on terrorism in the Ivory Coast. In 2014, France announced that its former colony would be its base for fighting Islamist terrorism in the Sahel region. The 3,000-strong task force of French soldiers has been based there ever since. The shooting is the first apparent terror attack to hit the country, which up till now had avoided attacks of the type experienced in nearby Cameroon, Chad, Mali, Niger, and Mali. As you can see, the infection is spreading. Angola's veteran leader Dos Santos says he's going to step down in 2018. I took the decision to leave active political activity in 2018, he said in a speech to his ruling MPLA party members. The next presidential election is expected to be held in 2017. Lately, though, Mr. Dos Santos' government has faltered as such. Oil-fueled largesse has collapsed along with global crude prices. Thousands of layoffs, a foreign currency crunch have stoked unprecedented public dissatisfaction with the government. The IMF expects economic growth of 3.5% this year, down from double-digit rates a few years ago. Crisis is exacerbating long-standing economic tensions. Angola is one of the world's most unequal societies, with the capital Luanda that ranks among the world's most expensive cities, while most of the country's 24 million people live on less than $2 a day. I agree with this comment. We are far from a post-Dos Santos era. Put up a photograph of the Angolan president with his wife Ana Paula at a rally, and a photograph of Luanda at night. The problems there, I think, are not, the trajectory is not yet improved. I think they're going to double down, throw a Hail Mary pass, hope for a V-shaped recovery in crude oil, and I just don't think that's going to happen. In South Sudan, City of Hope is now City of Fear. Tut glanced up at the gates of the displaced person's camp where he lives and shook his head. I can't go out there, he said. Why not? He was asked. Because of this, he said, rubbing the soft tribal scars on his forehead that mark him as a member of the Noya ethnic group. It's my death certificate. A lot of people in this town feel the same way. Juba, South Sudan's capital, and this whole country, for that matter, has slid so far from where its people dreamed it would go. Saying that Salva Kiir seems to be losing control, dressed in dark suits with his signature black cowboy hat, a gift from President George W. Bush. He is known as a decent and religious man, but also as a bit of an enigma. It's very difficult to pin down the personality of Kiir, said James Solomon Panit, a professor at Juba University. Most of his decisions depend on who influences him at the moment he makes it. He said that Mr. Kiir had urged his generals to respect human rights, but when government troops committed atrocities, as they have over and over again, Mr. Kiir did not punish anyone. He says it's on you. God will punish you. Mr. Kiir also needs each and every one of those generals to stay in power. On a recent day, the waiting rooms outside Mr. Kiir's office were crammed with high-ranking officials and other people hoping to meet with him, but he did not show up to work. The well-worn narrative of helpless, starving South Sudanese wildly oversimplifies the reality, he said. The real story is one of a falling out among kleptocratic thieves whose self-enrichment free-for-all before and after independence led competing factions to use ethnicity as a mobilizer, which is the equivalent of aiming a flamethrower at an oil rig. UN is investigating the director of an oil firm, this is Soma Oil and Gas, chaired by Michael Howard, for possible extremist links. A leaked memo sent last month by UN watchdog to diplomats in the UK and Norway reveals that the executive director for Africa at Soma Oil and Gas is under investigation for possible ties to extremist groups in East Africa, including Al-Shabaab. You can read the full letter from the UN investigators to Norway and UK officials. That link is on Rich Repubs. And you can have a look at this photograph of Michael Howard on the left, former Home Secretary, Conservative Party leader, who's the chairman of Soma Oil and Gas. And on his right is Hassan Khairi, whom I've met. who's the company's executive director for Africa, who's being accused of his ties to Al-Shabaab. Old Mutual's breakup adds to South Africa financial market woes. The main shareholders in two of South Africa's four largest banks are scaling back at a time when investor confidence is at its lowest since apartheid ended. Africa's most industrialized economy is confronting a potential downgrade to junk status, a weakening currency, inflation that is accelerating, and interest rates at a 6-year high. It's not surprising people want to leave, said Mike Schussler. There is a likelihood that you'll see a lot more companies leave, in addition to the fact many South African companies are focusing more outside the country. 29th of February, that was 2016, I wrote, Barclays' exit is a vote of no confidence in President Zuma. The real reason, in my view, is the Zuma-Zupta volatility. Barclays' Africa exit is a vote of no confidence in South Africa's President Zuma, and by extension in South Africa's gateway position. 2 days before South Africa's Finance Minister, Pravin Gordhan, presented his budget last Wednesday, Zuma described Van Rooyen as the most qualified finance minister his administration has had. Unless the president has stopped, Barclays' move might well be the first in what becomes an avalanche of exits, I said. State capture did the Guptas offer Treasury's top job to Deputy Minister Jonas. This is a story at the Daily Maverick via the Financial Times, well worth reading. South African all-share plus 2.06% this year. Dollar rand, I think the rand looks expensive, it should be sold. 15.2305, but of course we do have a Fed meeting where I think she's going to blink. We've got to consider that. Barclays, I wrote over the weekend, may be the first of many South African exits. Risk appetite has returned south in the international markets, and this can be glimpsed via the recent performance of higher beta currencies. For example, notwithstanding the determination of prosecutors to arrest Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, the former president of Brazil, the real closed out last week at a 2016 high of 3.58. The South Korean won is back below 1200 and is looking through some serious saber-rattling on the Korean peninsula. The South African rand is also close to a 2016 high. Crude oil has rebounded, with West Texas Intermediate oil closing last week at $39.50 a barrel, having twice touched $27 a barrel in January. President of the European Central Bank, Mario Draghi, turned up the QE dial a few notches. Gold is not buying into this. All is now well with the world and remains locked around $1,250. In South Africa, the equity market has pushed into positive territory, but you will recall I mentioned that the Barclays PLC exit could be the first in what might become an avalanche of exits. The news that Old Mutual is seeking its own breakup and that it will spin off its 54% controlling stake in Nedbank to shareholders is in essence the second exit after Barclays. Multinationals carrying large South African exposures via listings in Johannesburg are simply no longer prepared to wear the currency risk or Zupta price volatility. South African assets are a sell, and Barclays and Old Mutual are signalling that loud and clear, as are South Africans themselves, who seemingly cannot get their own money out fast enough, according to the latest high-frequency data. The Nigerian all-share, while down 9.27% year-to-date, has cut its year-to-date loss by half over the last few weeks. The minutes of the last NBC meeting confirmed that just one member of Nigeria's Central Bank Monetary Policy Committee, Mr. Salami, said the Naira should be devalued and allowed to trade within a band, saying that the fixed exchange rate would not work alongside a planned rise in government borrowing. The Naira trades some 40% below the official rate on the black market versus the dollar. That confirms the current official rate is a Mickey Mouse price. Africa's biggest economy grew by an estimated 2.8% last year. Salami said his proposal gained no support at the meeting, and that confirms that few are prepared to challenge President Muhammadu Buhari. The president is fixated, and I expected Nigeria's GDP to be at 0% through 2016. It is clear that this is a red line for Buhari, but What is also clear is that the negative spillover is going to get worse, not better. Here in Nairobi, we find ourselves slap bang in the middle of the earnings season. The banks have been reporting their full-year earnings, and positive price reactions confirm that investors have become too bearish, and we've seen some shapely rallies develop after these releases. KCB has definitively hurdled 40, Diamond Trust closed at a 2016 high, and interestingly, look at this comparison. Reported full-year loans and advances to customers accelerated 28.979% to 177.54 billion. Compare that to Barclays, which is 145.38 billion, just showing you how the domestic banks have overtaken these big behemoths. Once they were big behemoths, but Maburi Cement posted a big outsized full-year profit after tax gain of 50%. I expect Nairobi to outperform Lagos and Johannesburg. This week, everyone will be keeping an eye on the Federal Reserve, chaired by Janet Yellen. At the start of the year, the Fed was predicting 4 quarter points rate hikes through 2016. The markets are pricing in 2 rate hikes in 2016. The markets will pivot on the Fed decision this week. Egyptian EGX30 down 6.31%. Nigerian all-share down 9.27% year-to-date. Ghana Stock Exchange down 2.03% year-to-date. Coming to Kenya, Kengen is wooing financiers to its mega power investments. Received several commitments for the financing of its various projects as it seeks to spend a total of $1.4 billion in the period to 2019 to meet the surging power demand. Some international development and donor agencies are proposing to finance some of the projects, with Kengen co-financing through its reserves, besides a rights issue and bank borrowing. Among those committed are the Japanese International Cooperation Agency and the European Investment Bank for 2 all-carrier projects totaling 60 billion shillings. Kengen currently has an installed capacity of 1,617 megawatts out of the national capacity of 2,300 megawatts. Incredibly, Kengen trades at a PE of 1.489. That's notwithstanding the fact that it's up 9.85% this year. Have a look at the interview I did with Albert Ngugi, the MD, at the time of his first half results. Trans-Century running out of time, options over $75 million loan. This is in the East African. Investors are growing wary after a key advisor, Rand Merchant Bank, severed links with Trans-Century in protest the board's ignoring of its proposals on how to pay the 5-year loan, which matures on March 25. I think the equity holders are going to be extinguished in all scenarios I can think of. Trans-Century is down 31.51% this year. Liburu Tea reported full-year profit before tax increased 146.679%. Share prices, however, down 22.58% this year. Turnover grew 32.655%. EPS 1 shilling and 27 cents versus a loss of 28 cents previously. Dividend unchanged. The big thing about Liburu Tea is just think of where its real estate is. It's part just on adjacent to Nairobi. So more than a tea company, it's really a real estate play. Kenyan shilling, when I checked last, 101.377. 6-month high. Nairobi all share down minus 0.5% this year. NSE 20 minus 2.03% this year. Diageo anticipates the EABL Kenyan unit will record double-digit growth in the second half of this financial year, driven mainly by the resurgence of Senator Cake. Diageo owns 50.02% of EABL, says its sales growth projections of between 10 and 15% will mainly result from a resurgence in Senator Cake. EABL is up 3.296% so far this year. Once again, thank you for stopping by.